My brother got into med school on a Tuesday. I remember because my mom called me 3 times before I picked up. And when I finally did, she was crying. The happy kind, the kind she never cried for me. "Your brother got in," she said. "University of Michigan." Can you believe it? I could believe it. I'd been believing it my whole life. I was 23, sitting in my apartment in Columbus, surrounded by photography equipment I'd bought on a payment plan and a laptop with a cracked corner I kept meaning to fix. I was shooting weddings on weekends, corporate headshots on Tuesdays, and editing until 2 in the morning because that was the only way to keep the lights on. My brother Ethan was 26 and about to become the thing my parents had wanted one of us to be since before I understood what wanting meant. "That's amazing," I told her. And I meant it. I really did. What I didn't say was that 3 weeks earlier, I'd signed my first contract with a regional marketing agency. Small stuff, product photography, some lifestyle shoots for a local skincare brand. It paid $2,400 for 2 days of work, which was more than I'd made in a month at the cafe job I'd finally quit. I hadn't told anyone yet. I was waiting for the right moment, that warm opening in a conversation where you could slip in good news and have it land softly. It never came. After Ethan's acceptance, there was no room. I grew up in a house where success had one shape. My dad was an engineer. My mom had her nursing degree, though she stopped working when Ethan and I were young. They were practical people, careful with money, proud of credentials. A degree you could frame, a title you could explain to strangers at a barbecue. Ethan gave them that. I gave them confusion. "Photography," my dad said once when I told him I was switching my major. He said it the way you'd say photography if someone told you they were planning to navigate by the stars. Not angry, just genuinely puzzled. "As a career, people make real money at it, Dad." "Some people," he said. "Exceptional people." He said, "Exceptional people." He didn't say I wasn't exceptional. He didn't have to. By the time Ethan started his first year of medical school, I had stopped trying to bring my work into family dinners. It wasn't worth the polite silence. The way my dad would nod slowly like I was describing a dream I'd had. The way my mom would pivot to asking about Ethan's classes or his study group, or whether he was eating enough. I learned to talk about other things. Weather. Shows they were watching. The neighbor's new dog. I learned to keep myself small at the table. The dinner where everything changed happened on a Sunday in November, about a year and a half after Ethan started med school. My parents had driven up to see him. He was at Michigan, 4 hours from their house in Cincinnati, and I'd made the drive too. Because family stuff. Because obligation. Because I still showed up when they asked, even when part of me didn't want to. We went to a steakhouse near campus, one of those places with dark wood paneling and bread that comes in a basket. Ethan was in a good mood, talking about his rotations, about a professor who'd singled out his work in front of the class. My parents glowed. That's the only word for it. They sat up straighter when he talked. I was quiet most of the meal. I'd had a big week. I just finished a 3-day shoot for a brand campaign, a mid-size outdoor apparel company that had found me through a creative agency I'd been working with for about 6 months. It was the biggest job I'd taken on, $8,500, and I pulled it off. The creative director had already emailed asking about my availability for their spring catalog. I don't know what made me say something. Maybe it was the wine. Maybe I was just tired of making myself small. "I had a good week too, actually," I said during a pause. "Just wrapped a brand campaign. Outdoor gear company. It went really well." My mom smiled the way she did. "That's nice, sweetie." My dad tilted his head. "What does that pay? Something like that?" I told him. He glanced at my mom. She glanced at Ethan. Ethan, my brother, who I had shared a car with in high school, who I had covered for when he snuck out at 16, who I had genuinely rooted for when he got his acceptance. Ethan looked at me with this expression that I can only describe as patient pity. Like a doctor delivering mild news. "That's not bad," he said. For now. For now." My dad picked up his fork. "I just wonder about the stability. Ethan's got a clear path. Medicine, residency practice. You're kind of freelancing, right? Month to month? A lot of creative businesses start that way," I said. My voice came out more even than I felt. "Sure," he said. "But you're almost 25, Wren. At some point, you have to think about the long term." Wren. That's my name. I've been Wren my whole life, and my dad has always said it like a gentle correction. There's no pension in photography, my mom added, softly, like she was doing me a favor by saying it. Ethan will have loan debt, sure, but he'll have a real income. Benefits, security. I nodded. I picked up my glass of water. I looked at the bread basket. You could always go back to school, Ethan said. He wasn't being cruel. That's the thing that took me years to understand. He wasn't being cruel. He genuinely thought he was helping. There's no shame in pivoting. Lots of people do. I didn't say what I was thinking. I thanked the waiter when he came by. I ate my steak. I listened to 30 more minutes of medical school stories. On the drive home, I called my best friend Zoe, who had been doing graphic design for 2 years and understood the specific loneliness of building something that people who love you don't believe in. They did it again, I said. Of course they did, she said. What are you going to do about it? I didn't have an answer that night, but I started thinking about one. Here's what they didn't know about the next 2 years. I stopped going home for every holiday. Not out of bitterness, at least not entirely. I just stopped rearranging my schedule around events that left me feeling like a guest in my own family. I went at Christmas. I called on birthdays. But the random Sunday dinners, the come up and see Ethan while he's in town trips, I let those go. I told myself it was about bandwidth. It was also about self-preservation. I hired a part-time assistant, a photography student named June, who was sharp and fast and made me 10 times more efficient. I raised my rates twice in 18 months, once when I started booking more commercial work, once when I started turning away clients. I got on the radar of a mid-sized creative agency in Chicago that was building out their roster of photographers for editorial and advertising work. And I flew up to meet them in March, and I signed a retainer that changed everything. My business grossed just under $200,000 in my 26th year. I didn't tell my parents. I didn't tell them because I thought about the dinner table. I thought about what would happen if I brought a number like that into a conversation and set it down. I thought about my dad's careful nod, my mom's pivot, Ethan's patient pity. I thought about how even that wouldn't be enough. How they would find the caveat, the taxes, the instability, the lack of a retirement plan, and I would be right back in the breadbasket, staring at carbohydrates, feeling 23 again. So I kept it. I put it in a high-yield savings account and I watched it grow, and it was mine and no one could nod at it. I bought the house at 28. It was in Clintonville, a neighborhood in Columbus I'd loved since I first moved to the city. Old houses, big trees, the kind of streets where people actually walk to coffee shops and wave at their neighbors. The house was a 1940s brick colonial, 3 bedrooms, newly renovated kitchen, small backyard with a fence and a raised garden bed the previous owner had built, $387,000. I put down $80,000. I called my mom to tell her because she was my mother, and I thought, standing in my future living room on the hardwood floors with afternoon light coming through the old windows, that this was the kind of thing you called your mother to share. I'm buying a house, I said. Silence. In Clintonville, it's really beautiful. I can send you pictures. A house, she said. How? Rent houses in Ohio aren't cheap. Are you getting a loan? How are you managing a mortgage? I've been saving. My business has been doing well. But she paused. I heard her call to my dad, heard her say my name, the muffled exchange, and then my dad was on the line too. A house, he said. Flat. Like he was reading a word he didn't recognize. Yes, brick colonial, 3 bedrooms. Offer was accepted yesterday. There was a longer pause. Then my dad said, carefully, I just want to make sure you've thought this through. Homeownership is a serious commitment. Property taxes, maintenance, if something breaks. I know, Dad. Ethan's still renting. He's being practical, waiting until he's established. I'm established, I said, and I heard how it sounded. Not defensive, just true. Another pause. And then my mom said, almost to herself, photography. One word. Said like a question that was really a verdict. I sent them the pictures anyway. Neither of them said it was beautiful. I moved in 6 weeks later. Zoe helped me paint the living room. June and her boyfriend moved boxes. I bought a sectional from a local furniture store and spent an entire Saturday arranging it, rearranging it, and arranging it again. I hung my own prints on the walls. I planted tomatoes in the raised bed, badly. optimistically. My parents didn't come to see it. Ethan called once, about 2 months after I moved in. He was finishing his second year of residency in Detroit, exhausted, complaining about his hours. I listened. I asked about his girlfriend, Margot. I asked about the apartment. Before he hung up, he said, "Hey, I heard you bought a house." I did. "How's that going?" "I love it," I said. "Honestly, good," he said. And I could hear him trying to calibrate, wanting to be happy for me, slightly thrown that the calibration was harder than it should have been. "That's really good, Wren." We hung up and I sat in my kitchen with a cup of coffee and thought about how strange it was. "That's really good" from my brother felt like an event. About 8 months after I moved in, I got a call from my mom. It was a Wednesday afternoon, which was unusual. "Your father and I need to talk to you about something," she said. I felt it before she said anything else. That particular gravity, the kind that has nothing to do with weather. She told me that Ethan was in financial trouble. Not catastrophic. He wasn't losing a house or anything like that, but serious. He'd co-signed a lease on an expensive apartment in Detroit when he and a friend were going to live together, and the friend had backed out, leaving Ethan on the hook for $3,200 a month on a resident's salary. He'd also taken out a personal loan for a car right before some unexpected medical bills hit. Nothing serious health-wise, but expensive. He was behind. He'd asked them for help. "We've already helped him as much as we can right now," my mom said. "Your dad and I are on a fixed income. We've been helping pay some of his loan interest while he finishes residency, and were stretched." I was quiet. "We were wondering," she said, "if you might be able to help. Just a bridge loan, really, until he's out of residency and making real money." "How much?" I asked. She named a number. It was $15,000. I sat with it for a moment. "Can I ask you something?" I said, of course, at the steakhouse, a few years ago. "Do you remember what Dad said about me being almost 25 and needing to think about the long term?" Silence. "And what Ethan said? About pivoting not being shameful?" "Wren, I'm not trying to make this a fight," I said. "I'm genuinely asking, do you remember?" "I remember the dinner," she said. Careful. "I want you to understand something, Mom. I have worked incredibly hard to get where I am. I saved money when I was making almost nothing because I believed in what I was building. Nobody helped me with a loan. Nobody offered to cover my interest. I did it by myself, and when I told you I was doing well, you didn't ask how. You said photography like it was a punchline." She didn't say anything. "I love Ethan," I continued. "He is my brother and I want good things for him. But I can't be the safety net for a family that spent years telling me I wasn't building anything worth having." The silence on the line was a different kind now. Full. "I'm not saying no forever," I said. "I'm saying I need some time to think about this, and I need you to actually see what I've built, not tolerate it, not be politely surprised. Actually see it." My mom said she understood. I don't know if she did. It took 2 weeks before I called back. In that time, Ethan called me directly. That surprised me. He'd clearly talked to my parents and gotten at least part of the picture because he started the conversation differently than I expected. "I owe you an apology," he said. I sat down. The thing I said at dinner about pivoting, and honestly, just a lot of dinners. I've been thinking about it, and I think I was doing this thing where because Mom and Dad were always proud of me, I just absorbed their framework. Like their way of seeing the world was objectively right. And it wasn't fair to you. I didn't say anything for a moment. "I know what you've built is real," he said. "I looked you up. Like, actually looked. Your work is everywhere, Wren. That outdoor campaign, I saw it in an airport. I didn't even know it was yours until I searched your name. I'd seen it in airports too. That still got me, if I was honest." "I'm not calling to ask you for money," he added quickly. "That's not why I'm calling. I'm calling because I should have called years ago." We talked for almost an hour. It was the longest we'd spoken in probably 2 years. He told me about residency, the real version, not the polished dinner table version. I told him about the agency work, the retainer, the way I'd built the client list from nothing. He asked real questions. I answered them. We didn't solve everything that night. Families don't work that way. But something shifted. I ended up not giving the loan. Not out of spite. I want to be clear about that. because it matters to me that my reasons were clean. I looked at the situation honestly and I decided it wasn't something I could do with a whole heart. Ethan was navigating his own decisions, and I wasn't in a position to take on the financial and emotional weight of being the family bank. Not yet. Not when the dynamics were still recalibrating. I told my parents that. I said it plainly. My mom was upset. She didn't say so directly, she's not a direct person, but I could hear it in the shortness of the call, the way she said, "All right," and moved quickly to goodbye. My dad called separately 2 days later. He didn't try to change my mind. He just talked. We had the first real conversation we'd had in years, maybe ever, about his own father, who had told him engineering was the only serious choice, who had not believed in my dad's early interest in music until my dad buried it himself. He didn't frame it as an explanation for his behavior with me. I don't think he fully saw it that way yet, but he was circling something, and I let him circle. Before he hung up, he said, "I want to come see the house." "Okay," I said. "I mean it," he said. "I'd like to actually see what you've made." They came on a Saturday in April. My mom brought flowers from a grocery store, the kind that come in plastic wrap, which is such a her thing to do that it made me almost laugh. My dad walked through the house slowly, looking at things. He looked at my prints on the walls, the ones I'd shot and framed myself. He stopped at one for a long time. It was from the outdoor campaign. A wide shot of a woman standing at the edge of a lake at dawn, water like glass, mountains behind her. He hadn't known it was mine until that moment. "You took this," he said. "I did. That whole campaign." He nodded, and then he said, quietly, just to the print, and not really to me, "It's beautiful." It wasn't an apology. It wasn't a reckoning. It was just my dad standing in my house that I bought with money I earned, seeing something his daughter made and saying it was beautiful. I'll take it. I've learned to take what's real and not wait for perfect. Ethan sorted out his finances on his own. He negotiated out of the lease, moved into a smaller place, picked up extra shifts. He finished his residency 8 months later and matched with a hospitalist program in Cleveland, which was close enough that we've had dinner twice now. Real dinners, the kind where we talk about actual things. Last month he came to an exhibit I was part of, a group show at a gallery in the short north. He stood in front of 3 of my prints for so long that the gallerist thought he was going to make an offer. He wasn't. He was just looking. Afterward, outside on the sidewalk, he said, "I'm proud of you." And I looked at my brother, this person I grew up with, who I shared a back seat with on road trips, who I had spent years feeling like a footnote next to. And I said, "Thank you, I'm proud of me too." I meant both things. Being proud of yourself is something you have to practice, it turns out. Nobody hands it to you. My parents are still my parents. We're figuring each other out, which is maybe all any family does. The framework they had for success was the only one they knew, and they gave it to me the way people give things they believe in. I don't need them to take it back. I just need them to see that the thing I built doesn't fit in that frame. And that's not a flaw. That's the whole point. My house is full of light in the mornings. I have 3 tomato plants that are actually producing this year after 2 years of failure. My work is in airports and magazines and on the walls of hotel rooms and corporate lobbies that I'll probably never walk into, made by my hands from nothing. I didn't prove anyone wrong. That was never the goal. I just kept going. I thought a lot about that steakhouse dinner, the bread basket, the way my dad picked up his fork after I said my number, like the conversation had reached its natural end. I used to replay it looking for the thing I could have said differently, the perfect sentence that would have made them see me. I don't do that anymore. Not because I've stopped caring, but because I finally understand that the dinner wasn't really about me. It was about the only map they had. My parents built their lives on legibility, a degree you can explain, a title that lands cleanly at a barbecue. They handed that map to Ethan and he followed it, and they loved him for it. Not because they loved me less, but because his path confirmed something they needed to believe, that the world rewards the predictable. When I went off-road, it didn't just confuse them. It quietly threatened the map. That's not an excuse for what they said. It's just the truth underneath it, and I think you have to be able to see the truth underneath things before you can stop being controlled by them. What I know now is that the years I spent working in silence, the late edits, the payment plans, the clients I found one at a time, those years were building something that no one's approval could have accelerated. If my parents had believed in me at 23, I might have spent half my energy performing for them instead of building for myself. The doubt, as much as it hurt, kept me in my own lane. I had no one to impress, so I just worked. Ethan apologized, and I believe he meant it. But what struck me more than the apology was what he said about the airport, that he'd seen my work and hadn't known it was mine. Something I made with my hands was in an airport. Strangers walked past it every day without knowing my name, and it was still there. That's what I was building all along. Not a title that lands well at dinner, something real in the world that exists whether or not anyone who loves me can see it. My dad standing in my living room, looking at that print for a long time, saying it was beautiful. I've turned that moment over 100 times. He didn't apologize either, but he looked. And I think looking, for my dad, is harder than talking. I'll take a long look over an easy word. The thing about building a life that nobody believed in is that you become very clear on why you're doing it. I wasn't trying to prove anything. I was trying to make work I was proud of and earn enough to live well and feel like my choices were mine. That's it. That's the whole thing. And when I got there, I didn't feel triumphant. I just felt settled. Like I'd finally arrived at a place I'd been walking toward for years without knowing the address. Zoe told me once early on that the only people who ever truly build something are the ones who had no backup plan. Not because suffering is virtuous, but because having no exit forces you to figure out how to stay. I stayed. And it turns out staying, done with your eyes open and your standards intact, is the whole practice. I still plant tomatoes badly every spring. But they grow anyway.